So it's another one of this Around the Block series that I do. We're not exactly around the block, because as you can see, this is nowhere near Johannesburg. We are actually in Kwa-Zulu Natal, and the reason why we're here is because we have got the all-new Range Rover, and we've decided to do a road trip with the car because this is the perfect vehicle to do a road trip. As you can see, this car is extremely fancy. It's one of those vehicles that if you drive it, a lot of people think that you've got money. And for me personally, it's one of those things that I actually feel a little bit uncomfortable when you're in something that costs upwards of 3 million rand for the top of the range variant, and then this comes in at around about 3.5 million rand, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But just look at this thing. It is absolutely incredible to look at. These Range Rovers, this full bodies, a lot of people have different names for them. Some people call it the full body, just the normal Range Rover. It's one of those cars that have stayed very true to their design elements for a long time. So they don't look very different each iteration, and this car just looks like a more modernized version of the Range Rover that we've come to know and love. From a design Q perspective, they've simplified a lot of things. The lines are clean. Everything about it looks boxy, but not too boxy. Little nice things that I like. When you open up the door here, you've got like a little step because short people like myself need a little bit of assistance getting inside the car. But I do love just how the vehicle looks as a whole. My favorite part of this car, the front, we all know what the front looks like, but it's this. The back of the vehicle and how you don't even see where the lights are, because this could just be one thing, but this is actually the lighting system on this side here, and at night it looks absolutely wild. This car screams minimalism, it screams tech, it screams money, and it is a lot of vehicle, and you can understand why this nameplate for a long time has been what it is. I was going to show you the boot, but do you really care about the boot of what a Range Rover looks like? I don't think so. You're not worried about the practicality of that. Instead, however, you'd be more worried about, first and foremost, you've got little headphone things here, but this kind of stuff here. Look at this. So I can adjust my seats to make sure that I've got, all comfortable, but it literally looks like I am in a business class cabin in this car. You've got this whole setup where you've got your infotainment system, you can do a bunch of stuff there. And yes, this car still is a normal, it is a normal you could put 3 people in the back here. But how it sets up there, I can't get it right now. So you can still put this thing back so 3 people can sit here. But how it's set up now, it's set up like a 4-seater so that the people who sit at the back can literally just enjoy their life and just keep on doing whatever they're going to do. But very fancy car, and you can understand why a lot of people like this. I don't know why I'm battling out to get things to work here. I'm not break anything. But if you step inside and look at how this cabin works, it is very, very smart. So you've got a touchscreen infotainment. You've got like your seats that you can manage on this side here. Seats, you can adjust them. You can do a bunch of things there. You've got climate, lighting, your blinds, your rear screens. You can control a bunch of stuff from the back of the vehicle here. And you can even see by my seating position that it's really set up to be a car that you can be chauffeured in, should you want to be chauffeured in. Very fancy. Although this angle is a bit aggressive on my side, so I'd actually shift that to be a little bit more like that. Just because if you're sitting like this the whole time, but in any case, I'm driving half the time, so it makes sense. But the front of the vehicle is just as nice. The last time I drove one of these suction doors, by the way. Last time I drove one of these, it had the white interior. And the white interior, I think for me, could be a little bit impractical, especially if you've got kids, because wealthy people have kids. You can actually have all the kids if you want, if you've got a lot of money. If you've got Range Rover money, you can probably have all the kids in the world. But again, bits and bobs that you can see are very, very fancy. Touchscreen infotainment system, I mean, I don't even have to tell you. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it does it all. Digital instrument cluster. You've also got, what I do find quite interesting is in all the Range Rovers, if you go back to the old school Range Rovers, they've got these little handrests here, and you've got still this rotary dial. And I love it. In a 3.5 million rand car, you still can like wind up your dials. I think they do that for the old school Range Rover people that still want this feel of a Range Rover. But overall, I'm actually quite surprised at how minimalistic this cabin is. To me, this car really comes alive as when you drive it, because it feels very distinct. It feels like a luxurious vehicle, but I'll talk about that as I'm driving at the same time. But overall, you can see that this is a very high quality cabin. This is not a cheap vehicle. I mean, it starts off at around about 3.2 million rand. I think for the top of the range model, you can spend, I think, close to 4.8 million rand for this car. So it's a lot of car, but it also says it. When you're in this vehicle, people know that you're in a Range Rover. And overall, it's got all the tech you'd want. It's got all the smart bits and bobs that you'd want. And I can understand, you feel like a boss in this thing. So let's go for a drive and we can talk a bit more about the engine that it's got, how it drives, how you can set it up. But overall, do I feel like a president's son? Perhaps in this car I do. So before we set off, I want to show you why this car is so easy to maneuver in tight spaces. So this car has got rear wheel steering, and I don't know if you'll actually be able to pick up properly on this interface, but it doesn't show you properly. But for instance, you can see that we're in a bit of a tight spot. I'm actually going to do like a little U just so you can see that. So look at this, right? I just turn this like that and the wheels kick in, so it makes the turning circle much shorter. I mean, this car is long. Mind you, this car is very long, but that's essentially 2 maneuvers, and I probably could have still gone a bit deeper in there. But you can actually see on the diagram that the wheels move the opposite way, the back wheels move an opposite way for it to make it easier, because imagine a car of this size, to park it is not easy, but they make it easier because it's got rear wheel steering. So this is the D350. This car is the first edition, so you know when they come out, they always bring out the first. Oh, I thought that thing was going to touch the thing. But they always come out with the first edition that's got a few extra bits and bobs in the car. The first thing you notice with this vehicle, and I've been very fortunate to be able to drive a lot of luxury cars, is how this car just feels so easy to maneuver. It's a big vehicle, but it's just feels like it's a bit like putty in your hands. There's moments where sometimes you actually feel it's a little bit too soft. But I think it's because I'm also used to a lot of performance cars as well, which have harder rides and harder suspensions. But yeah, we've got like this grating that we're going to pass now, and that would have been like grr, grr, if there's something else, but this is much easier. I'm pretty sure I should actually like record me just going grr, grr on that, but in any case. So this car now has got a 3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder. It produces 258 kilowatts. It's got 700 Newton meters of torque. So it's got a decent amount of push, more than a decent amount of push. You don't need more than 300 kilowatts in an SUV, I personally feel, unless you want a performance SUV. This is not a performance SUV. It is essentially like a, I was going to say something like an XJ on stilts in a way. I was going to say a BMW 7 Series or S-Class on wheels, but you know, we'll be nice to them because we'll keep it to the same brand. But this car, driving it from Johannesburg to KZN, has been phenomenal. Because of the diesel, the best I was able to average in this car was 6.8 liters per 100 kilometers, which is incredible for a car of this size. So I'm still running just under half a tank of fuel, and we've been driving this car for upwards of 550 kilometers. So if you really want to be frugal in a car like this, you really can be quite frugal. 6.8 is not bad at all. I mean, in fact, that is quite brilliant. And I like the fact that Land Rover products have always been quite good for long-haul driving seat position. If you look here, I can put my hand here, I can adjust my little roller thing on this side so that I find the optimum position so I can lock in and enjoy the ride. And I'm so glad that we did this with this car, because I wouldn't have done this car justice by just driving it in and around Sandton. It's nice that we took it out on a long ride and get the most out of the vehicle. This car, from a cornering perspective, from a braking perspective, from a ride quality perspective, we're on 23-inch wheels here, but this car's still so soft. We're on low profile tires, but it still soaks everything up. And this to me is very much like how the Mercedes-Benz S-Class has been always seen as the pinnacle of luxury motoring in that segment. To me, the Range Rover has earned those stripes in how the car is always known for it being like the pinnacle of luxury. And you can understand that. Yes, you probably find that the competition out there can do the same thing, probably even a little bit better in some instances if you look at what you can buy for this outlay. But when it comes to brand power, and when you hold these keys in your hand, it's so very awkward. I was like, I've got so many keys here. When you hold these keys in your hand and you know that these keys belong to a Range Rover, and not a Range Rover Sport or anything like that, nothing wrong with the Range Rover Sports, but there's something about the full-on Range Rover full body, as we call it. I don't even know, they don't list it as a full body, but when you say a Range Rover full body, those who know. This car feels, there's a thing that happens in your head when you drive a car like this. You feel like a boss. And that's the one thing that we don't often talk about as journalists. You know, we like to compare things on paper, to say, on paper, this is better than this. On paper, this is better than that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to this kind of space and when it comes to this kind of clientele, knowing that you've got a car like this says it all. And knowing that you drive a Range Rover full body, well, I'll keep on saying Range Rover full body, but this kind of car, it makes sense. And I can understand why people who have always owned these cars will continue to own these cars, because it just feels good. There's something about how a car makes you feel, and that's actually a lot of it. It's how the vehicle makes you feel. And if you're going to be in this space, yes, for the same outlay, you could probably buy yourself, I don't know, a G-Wagon. You could probably buy yourself a Bentayga. I haven't looked at car prices in a while, so I might be wrong. In the comments, probably might say a Bentayga costs 5 million or whatever. But like I said, full spec of this thing, if you buy like the full last number, you're going to be spending close to about 4.8 odd million rand for like the super luxurious one. I think that's probably even the, I stand to be corrected, it could be the bulletproof spec. I don't know how, but I've seen that you can get a super expensive one that is close to 5 million rand. So yes, there's a lot of stuff you can buy in that price tag, but at the end of the day, it's all about what you want. And if you're the kind of classy individual that wants something like this, it makes sense. I can't fault you. Another nice thing, this car's got the Meridian sound system, so the sound system bangs. The overall vehicle is one that is begging to be driven from a long time perspective. I can't find the right word, like long hauling. It's a car that needs to be road tripped, and I'm so glad we did this, because what a car. I am very impressed by this vehicle. As with anything, nothing's perfect, but for what this car is meant to do, it's good. It is very good, and it looks the business. So if you want people to think that you are super rich, be a journalist and get to drive one of these things for a week.